Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about new languages. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, do you learn a new language every year? No. Whoever told you that? So the I know that this might be a source of some concern for some software developers, that you feel like you're being left behind because you don't know enough languages, or you don't know enough tools, etc., etc. And I'm here to tell you that the vast majority of software developers don't know more than one or two languages. The reason why I state that is because the vast majority of software developers usually work with Java or C Sharp. That's not always true, of course. Like, there are a lot of developers, but I'm exaggerating a little bit. But what I'm trying to say to you is that the goal for a software developer who's a standard software developer, somebody who does this as a job, is not to learn as many languages as possible, because it's actually not really beneficial to learn as many languages as possible. Guys, there are languages that I actively have almost no interest in learning. That's not because I have a prejudice against the language. It's just that it doesn't offer me anything to learn it. I'll give you as an example. Let's say that I enjoy both Java and C Sharp, but if you knew one or the other and you didn't really have an interest to learn the other, there's not really a downside for you to not learn the other thing. There's not that much you're going to gain. There are absolutely certain things if you have an interest, but it's not something that you're going to like damage your career if you're not both a master of C Sharp and a master of Java. Same thing like, say, Python and Ruby. So you could learn one or the other and go the rest of your career without having both, and it's not going to really matter to you. So when I learn new things, it's not really, the focus isn't really a language. Sometimes, yes, I learn a new language, but that's not because my goal is to learn as many languages as possible. It is, what my goal is to learn a new skill or something that I find interesting. And as long that is much broader than learning a specific language. An example would be, at one point I really thought that, say, Golang was really interesting. So I sat down and took some introductionary courses into the syntax, built some small things and so forth, and I learned some things about Go that I thought was interesting. But it's not something that stuck with me. It's not something that made me go, hey, you know what, I'm going to spend so much time working in Go, because it's not because Go is bad. It's a really great language, but it wasn't for me. At that point, I had other things that was interesting to me, so I started looking at Rust, and then I thought that was really interesting, and I stuck with that a little bit more, and I realized that, wow, there's a lot of benefits here, and a lot of things that are really, really cool, really, really interesting. And I had the same thing with Elixir and Erlang, like all these different languages over the years. But I'm not changing my career for it. I'm not like actively trying to master these languages just for the sake of mastering them. On the other hand, I found security work, pen testing, bug bounty hunting, and so forth really, really interesting. And then I went in and started looking into that. Same thing with machine learning. I thought that was pretty cool, and took some courses, started learning a little bit about that. And then I thought, hey, you know what? DevOps and operations types of work, that's also really interesting in cloud solutions. And that actually had some benefits to my immediate career. So I stuck with that a little bit longer, because it's actually something that I do at work. So I had more incentive to go deeper into those subjects, and I felt at the very least motivated to go deeper into those subjects because they had more relevancy. And that's the thing that I think that that's the way it works for me, and I think you should do a very similar sort of thing. Don't feel the need to learn as many languages as possible. There are absolutely benefits to learning a range of languages, because it's usually, at least what I find, because I have tried a lot of different languages. Every language does, like every community of languages, we all do things differently, and there are always useful ideas that can be brought in from different languages. I even go as far as to say that if you want to be a super senior master JavaScript developer, the best thing for you is to learn something like Java or C#. Because and it really is down to the fact that those languages have some of the most mature ideas on enterprise level development, something that is completely lacking for the most part in something like Node.js or JavaScript development. And I really do believe that. It's just my personal opinion, but you will actually be a better JavaScript developer if you learn those enterprise ideas, which are basically non-existent in that ecosystem. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn JavaScript, because JavaScript is awesome. I hope that makes sense to you, that you get better at one thing if you learn the other thing. That's not always the case, though. Sometimes it's just going to be a repeat of something you already know, and that's why I think that the focus for you should be to continuously expand your skill set rather than a specific language. Because I can promise you guys, there are many guys and girls who work as software developers who don't learn more than 1 or 2 languages, and they spend most of their career in working either at the same company or a range of companies who always use the same stack. And the reason why that works is because your employer doesn't care how many languages you know, except for maybe it's a little bit of fun trivia in the interview. But at the end of the day, what they care about is that you can produce results in the language or the stack that they are using. So anything above that, like that's a nice, like that's like frosting on the cake, but it's not the cake, it's not the important thing. It's something that you do for yourself. So focus more on the skills that you want to learn. If you really want some hot tips on how to expand your relevancy as a software developer, realize that the language that you use, that's usually just one part of the whole development experience. Then you have tons of tools and practices in the area of operations, front end, back end, depending on what you're doing, the tooling surrounding all of this stuff, like Docker, Kubernetes, different types of databases, different types of external systems like logging systems, monitoring systems, etc., etc. There are so many things that are not language related that will be extremely important, or at the very least very useful for you to know about if your ambition is to become like the most senior in-demand software developer that you can possibly become. So what I want you to take away from this is that no, I don't learn a new language every year. I learn a new language when there's a new language that comes around that I feel is interesting. Usually the thing that is true about me is that I start learning a new skill set or something, a new tool or a new concept within software development every year. I would say I probably do more than one thing per year, but I hope that makes sense. You have to understand that the software development is about more than just the language that you pick, and there is no real benefit that furthers your career by learning a lot of languages. So if you want to learn a lot of languages, I think that you should, because you will learn a lot of stuff. It's like reading books or traveling. It will expand your way of thinking, but it's not going to be the thing that is going to decide if you're going to get the job or if you're not going to get the job. Your employer doesn't care if you know 100 languages or just the language that they're using. As long as you do the thing that they're doing really, really well, that's the thing that matters the most. But for yourself and your career, I think that you should understand that there's a lot of tools and other surrounding theory and practices around the language that you're using, and that's the stuff that you should focus on. Don't think about a language as the primary focus of learning new things. Think about what are all the things that are used in order to deliver software, and that can be everything from operations, front end, back end, database administration, Scrum and Agile practices, team building and leadership, presentation skills. There's tons of stuff that might be relevant if your desire is to further your career as a software developer. Have a great day.